one of my huge beliefs in life is just to take people along for the ride. I don't want to be successful for the sake of being successful and I want money and I want fame and I want power. I want to be successful because I want to bring along all of the people who have made an impact on my life. I want them to share in the success with me.
Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the businesses, people, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Troy Farkas, and on today's episode, an interview with me, the host and executive producer of this podcast. And it's conducted by previous guest on the show, spiritual guide Alex Bynum. In this conversation, we'll discuss the origins of Seacoast Stories, when I first fell in love with podcasts, working at ESPN as a depressed 21-year-old, the Seacoast Stories IPA we just released, what to expect in season 2 of the show, and so much more. You'll hear from me all episode, so take it away, Alex.
I'm super excited to be here with the one and only Troy Farkas today. You may know him. He is the creator of Seacoast Stories. He has a book called Surrender. He's moving into live events. He has a beer coming out. Yeah, he's an awesome guy. And I just thought, you know what would be really fun? What if we interviewed Troy this week? So Troy, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Alex. It is a pleasure to be on my own show. To your point, there's a lot of things happening. And the show, its current format, doesn't really give me the structure to talk about all of the things happening. So this is a great opportunity to talk about all those things. And also the Seacoast should know me more. I've used the show to just highlight a couple different aspects of my personality in my past, but I haven't really given the full story. Especially if you're a newer listener, you have no idea who I am. So a wonderful idea you approached me about having me tell my Seacoast story. So I'm very excited to talk to you.
Yeah, you're always spotlighting everyone else. And I was like, it is time. We need to know, who is Troy Farkas?
That's a loaded question.
So on that note, I would love to hear maybe a couple of snapshots from your past. Just get into, how did you become Troy? Who is Troy?
Oof. Okay. So I grew up in upstate New York. I was originally born in Seattle. I moved to North Carolina. I come from the media family, mom, dad, newspaper writers, editors, and I never wanted to get into the family business. I never had dreams of getting into the family business, but it was just a part of me. It was inescapable in my childhood, seeing my dad edit page proofs, which is the rough draft of the newspaper before it goes out, seeing my dad spending weekends doing that, grinding over that. And then our dinner table conversations being about sentence structure and where to put the commas and all that stuff. So it was just kind of in my blood. And I studied U.S. history at the University of Albany just because I'm a history nerd, but I had no idea what I wanted to do with that. But I had this media background just from my childhood. And so I just started doing on campus all the things. I was kind of bored my freshman year of college. I wasn't a drinker. I wasn't a partier. So I needed things to do to fill the time so that I had a somewhat good college experience. And so I started getting into the student media, the TV, radio, newspaper. I didn't go to a media school, so I really wasn't competing with many other students. They had no interest in it. So I kind of pretty much just from day one got to come in and run all of these things, which was great. I was putting out very low quality stuff, but I was making stuff. I was getting reps. I was making the inevitable mistakes, not hitting record, losing your files, wasting someone's time, made all those mistakes in college when it didn't matter and when there were no stakes. And then once I graduated college in 3 years, I was applying for history museum jobs. I was applying for media jobs. And of the 14 jobs I applied to, the first one and only one to respond to me was ESPN, which was pretty cool. As someone who grew up in a sports family, they hired me to be a production assistant at ESPN Radio, a national radio network. And I worked there for 3.5 years in radio. The first 2 years, hated my life. It was horrible because it's 24/7. You're the young guy in the totem pole. So you're working nights, weekends, overnights. Your off days are Monday and Tuesday in Farmtown, Connecticut. I had no life. I had no friends. I was tired all of the time. I was depressed. I lost a bunch of weight because I just wasn't eating, because my body clock was all over the place. And it was really hard. But I grinded and grinded and grinded. And I said, okay, if my life's going to suck, I'm just going to throw myself into my work and learning as much as possible while I'm at this place that I have so many resources, so many good, smart people who know what they're doing. And I truly learned from the best of the best in the media industry. And so I just trained and studied and worked 90 hours a week because I really didn't have any other option. And then luckily, I'm very good at sucking up to the right people. I found the people who worked in podcasting and cozied up to them, and they essentially created a job for me out of thin air to work in ESPN's podcast department. And then that was 2019, and that was when I first started getting into podcasting, and I've been addicted to it ever since.
So when you were sucking up to these people, let's say, was that because you knew that you wanted to go in the podcast direction?
Not necessarily. It was just instilled in me very early on my time at ESPN that these people at this company are super open to talking to the young employees. They were once in your shoes. This is a company where people stay there for a long time and work their way up. So a lot of the higher ups there were once in my shoes and are open to giving me their time. So I was just cold emailing after cold emailing, high up person at the company. I was tight with the president of ESPN. Like no 22-year-old kid had a relationship with the president of ESPN. I did. And I did with a lot of other people in the C-suite as well. And anybody who had done anything. If someone at the company had done anything remotely that I was interested in any sector of the company, marketing, social, documentary, whatever, I wanted to talk to them, get coffee. We had a Starbucks on campus, so we'd just go to Starbucks for 30 minutes and just barrage people with questions. And so I just had a bunch of those conversations, did my follow-ups with them every 3 months, 6 months with the people that I really wanted to have relationships with. And the podcasting people, I just really stuck to them. And me working in radio, a lot of the skills are transferable. So it was a pretty seamless fit. I didn't have to learn much more. And then they created a job for me. And I started immediately working with really big name talents, producing for much bigger platforms than the weekend radio shows with no name hosts that I was working with. I was immediately working with very famous people with very big followings. And I had a very big responsibility where I was producing podcasts for shows that are heard by hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And Amazing. It was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you're young. It's the family business. You know, it's a natural fit for you, even though you're not sure about it. You get to college, you start doing the media stuff. You get to ESPN and you're grinding like crazy. So at this point, I'm asking myself, well, if you're grinding like crazy, where's the passion, and what made, when you switched into podcasting, feel like, I love this, I want to do this? Like, tell me about your passion during that process. Like, what makes podcasting your passion?
Yeah. First of all, just working in it, it was so much healthier for me than radio. I'm someone who is very into health and wellness, very into looking after myself. Radio, I was not looking after myself. It was so difficult to. Sure, I was working out, I was still eating right, but like I said, my body clock was all over the place. I am addicted to the morning. I love the morning. And so it's something about my body. I am a morning person. So when I was getting off the clock at 6 a.m., I could not sleep while the sun was up. Would have loved to have gone to bed at 6:30 a.m. and woken up at 3 p.m. My body would not allow me to do that. I would sleep from like 6:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. and then just be up for the day. This is where I discovered coffee and the magic of caffeine to get me through the days. But I was miserable because I was just so tired all the time, so on edge all the time. That schedule did not allow me to live the kind of healthy life that I wanted. Podcasting offered that. Sure, it's year round, of course, but it's 9-ish to 5-ish. And I was still the young man on the totem pole, so I was still doing like the weekend shift here, the 7 a.m. here, but like so much more normal. My happiness levels, my energy levels, my passion for the work just immediately transformed overnight once I transitioned into podcasting. And what I love about podcasting is just the on-demand nature of it. You can plug into this anytime you want, any topic you want. You can spend 15 minutes on an episode here, 30 minutes on an episode there. How you choose to consume it is completely up to you. And I'm a person who just loves having personal choice all the time, things being fully within my control. So it just really resonated with me as a consumer. Now back to when I was super depressed working in radio, what also was getting me through my days was the podcast that I was just listening to as a fan. This was when I discovered podcasts just as a fan. It was then and there that I realized how impactful that voice in your ears could be. There's a really intimate relationship between host and listener. I was looking forward to that Wednesday 4:30 p.m. drop of the Bill Simmons podcast, or Pardon My Take. These were the shows I was listening to at that time. These mean nothing to you, but these are sports shows. I was also a big Call Her Daddy fan. Like early days, I looked forward to those episodes with Alex and Sophia. Got me through my days, something to listen to distract me from the fact that I had no friends, no romantic prospects, super unhealthy. And podcasting got me through my days. And so that was kind of where the passion came from the ensuing years working in podcasting. As I started working behind the scenes of it, it was, I know that there are people listening to this baseball podcast, this basketball podcast. They love this sport, but they have miserable lives. And this podcast is just getting them through their days like it once was for me. Even though I had a really cool job on the surface, we all, even if we have cool jobs, we lose sight of how cool it is sometimes. Once you get so used to the repetitiveness of it, you start to lose sight of how cool it is sometimes. And so when I would lose sight of that, I would just remind myself, you were the kid who needed this. You were going to grind on these episodes. You were going to leave no stones unturned. You are going to cut no corners. You are going to get this out on time. You are going to do this well because this is needed by someone. And it is your job to bring that to them. And so that's why I just really fell in love with podcasting.
Amazing. What were some of the first memories you have doing podcasting? Like, what was the experience like when you started out? Because you're in a very different place now, right?
Yes,
with Seacoast Stories, and we'll get into that.
For sure.
But when you were first interviewing people,
when I was first interviewing people?
Yeah, when you were first, starting out, okay, I'm going to be a podcaster, not necessarily Seacoast Stories.
Right.
But
So when I was at ESPN, I was a producer. I was not on air. I was behind the scenes. Other people were hosting and conducting the interviews. I did not start hosting my own podcast until 2020.
I see. And what was that? Was that Seacoast Stories or was that something?
That was the Troy Farkas show.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a Troy Farkas show.
There was the Troy Farkas show. So I started that in September 2020. Let's go back.
And what was that?
Let's go back to that time in our lives. This is deep COVID. This is the world is ending. I'm not sure if I'm going to be alive next year. We're getting really existential about what is the meaning of life? What do I want out of life? What matters most to me in life? And personally, I had just missed so many people in my life that I hadn't seen for a while. And I'd always wanted to have a podcast, working podcasting. Well, it'd be cool to have a podcast. I never pulled the trigger, was a bit insecure about it. I'm like, can I do this technologically? What do I need to do? But then after working podcasting a little bit, I knew what I needed and knew that I was capable. Again, had studied under some of the best, so I knew what I was doing. So my initial idea was like, okay, I want to start a podcast. I don't really know what I want it to be about, but I just know right now, I just miss people and I miss talking to people and I need that cup filled. So I'm just going to interview my friends. So I'm just going to do this podcast once a week. I don't know what to call it because I don't really know what it's about, but I'm just going to call it the Troy Farkas Show. And I later got uncomfortable with that, so I changed the name because that felt very ego-driven to me, and I didn't like that feeling. But my first episode was literally with a friend that I met when I was 3 years old. I used it as a way to reconnect with people I hadn't thought about in a while, that had left my life years ago. But when you reach out to people to ask them to come on a podcast, no one ever says no. If you reached out to an old friend to be like, hey, I haven't seen you in 7 years, let's go get coffee, they're much more likely to say no. And they'll be like, no, I'm not going to do that. But a podcast virtually over Zoom, oh yeah, sure, I've never been on a podcast before. Why not? And so it just became this way to reconnect with old people, to have really meaningful conversations. Literally my sixth grade crush, who I hadn't spoken to in 10 years, I slid into her DMs and was like,
yeah, you did.
You want to come on my podcast? She lives in Austin, Texas. And I just did things like that. And that was when I really just started getting reps. I had the producing reps. That wasn't difficult, but just the hosting, the being on air, the comfortable talking to people, how to interview, all of those things. So that was the first podcast I ever hosted, the Troy Farkas Show.
And did that help you get out your nerves and stuff and kind of start to bring into vision what you would eventually lead to with Seacoast Stories?
Yes and no. When I was 21 and working at ESPN and quickly realized that this corporate thing, this ain't for me, I very immediately went to I think the dream is to work for yourself. I just studied abroad for the first time. I had just left the country for the first time. I was in this mode of there is so much the world has to offer. And I was following these authors and whatnot. I was like, what if I just traveled the world and blogged, and I'm a 21-year-old kid. I don't have much money, but I also don't need much. I can just make it work, make some money online some way and travel the world. These were the grandiose dreams I had. And so that stuck with me always. That was always kind of the lever I wanted to pull. But I also realized I'm at ESPN. I can get amazing experience here. I'm not ready yet for that kind of thing. I don't have the skills yet or the confidence yet, the life skills. I'm 21. What life things do I have to write about yet? So I needed to stick with it in corporate for a few more years. And so when I started hosting the Troy Farkas show, I was coming back to, oh yeah, I'm getting that solo content itch again. I want to do more and more of that. And so hosted the Troy Farkas show for a while. Started that September 2020, transitioned it to a different name in March 2022. I called it The Found Generation. It's a self-improvement podcast. It's a play on words in U.S. history. No one understands it but me, but that's totally fine. But I was really obsessed with health and wellness and career growth and all of these things. And so the podcast kind of became more driven to just getting the best out of your life and all the little tips and tricks you can do to change that. And so then Found Generation from spring 22 to spring 24. And then I realized this ain't it anymore. A, I didn't like how the self-improvement space in general was going, and I didn't really want to be a part of it anymore. And B, when I came to the Seacoast and was kind of moving out of this era of nomadic, seemingly mentally unstable Troy moving somewhere new every 3 months. What is this kid doing? Literally, people would want to send me a mail and they'd be like, what's your address nowadays? I don't even know. I can't keep track of you. I couldn't keep track of myself either. And then Seacoast Stories, just the voices in my head were growing loud to do something local. And then I just pulled the trigger.
Hey everyone, it's Troy. I just need 30 seconds for you to hear me out. When you follow the podcast on Apple or Spotify, the apps will start recommending Seacoast Stories to other local people when they're searching for new shows to listen to. So the number one way you can help us tell local stories is to hit the follow button wherever you're listening to this show. Thank you in advance for doing that and for being here today. Now back to today's story.
You said that you hosted a live event. And from that event, you're like, there's something special about the Seacoast. There's a magic here. Is that how you transitioned to Seacoast Stories? Is that where Seacoast Stories comes from?
Yes, exactly that. Hosted the Found Generation Live, March 25th, 24 at the Music Hall Lounge, which I had no business doing that. I was literally just sitting around in January of this year. I don't remember the circumstances, but I was just thinking about, would love to host a live podcast. That's kind of always been on the bucket list. I've never done that. I've produced live podcasts at Spotify and ESPN, but I've never done something for myself. So let me just look into places here that might be able to accommodate that. Google led me to the Music Hall Lounge, sent an email, booked it. Then I was like, what have I done? No one knows who I am. No one in this area listens to this show. I'm new to the area. No one's going to come to this, but I'm going to pull every lever I can to try to get people to come to this thing. And I did. And I had 3 awesome guests, Stephanie Polini, who owns 3 Bridges Yoga, Jennifer DeRogers, who owns Laney and Lou, and then Sam Robbins, who's a local musician, and he's just the man. And 75 people came to the show on a Monday in March. And it was just a really special night of hearing local stories and introducing myself to the community and just getting on that stage again. I love performing. I played sports my whole life. I sang national anthems at my own events. I was in choir. I sang opera. I was in musical theater in college. I've been performing my whole life. I had a radio show, and I'd been missing that part of me. I'd been suppressing that part of me for years. And when I was on that stage, I was just like, this is so fucking terrifying, but I love this. We're living our best lives when we're doing things that are just on the edge of our comfort zones, where it's like, this is terrifying, but I also love this. When we do things that scare us, but give us that nervous energy in a good way, that's where life is most lived. And that's the feeling that I have on stage. That's the feeling that I'm having right now as I'm thinking about the live event on January 9th. And I just love that. And I was like, I need this feeling. This is where I am at my best. everyone's biggest fear is public speaking. Everyone's biggest fear is being in front of a crowd. And I'm scared of it too, but I want to do that. I want to run toward what I'm scared of rather than run away from it. And so that was, okay, I need to do this more. Now, no one knows what the Found Generation is. I need a brand. I need something for people to become fans of so that they would come to live events. So Seacoast Stories, really, I did not want to start a weekly podcast. I wanted to start something that was big enough that people would then want to go see it in person. Seacoast Stories was merely just a vehicle to get people to come out to see me live in person, because that's what I'm all about right now. I am all about getting people together in person, feeling each other's energy, connecting with each other face to face, because our world needs that so badly. And I'm so passionate about that and just bringing people together as much as possible. And these live events and other things that I want to do to bring people together are my ways of contributing to the world and trying to fix our problems. And so Seacoast Stories was born out of, I want to get on stage more. I want to bring people together more. There's clearly a deep desire to support local, to hear from local people in this area. And no one's really telling people stories in this area. Not to criticize local media, but it's kind of lacking in the human interest sense. Someone needs to tell the stories of all of these incredible people here. And I believe I have the ability, the skill set to do that here. One of my favorite pieces of wisdom I've gleaned through the years is from Stephen Bartlett, who hosts the Diary of a CEO podcast, which is the biggest podcast in the UK. I read his book last year, 33 Laws. And one of his laws for succeeding in life and business was, your skills are worthless, but your context is valuable. Meaning, in my life, okay, my podcast hosting, producing, all of that skills, you throw me in New York City, like I'm just another average Joe. A lot of people can do that. In LA, I'm just an average Joe. On the Seacoast, that skill set is more of a commodity. And so my skills are more valuable here because of where I am physically doing that. And I think that's why Seacoast Stories is really taking off.
Yeah, it almost sounds like Seacoast Stories is the vehicle for something bigger, that bigger vision of community, of leadership, bringing people together. And I love that.
Exactly that.
So I know you're wrapping up on season 1 of the show.
Correct.
So who has been the most memorable guest, or which guest have you gotten the most feedback on?
Well, besides Alex Bynum being the most the most memorable guest, well, the most feedback was with Vernon Family Farm. If it bleeds, it leads, to steal an old line from the media. People are drawn to controversy. People are drawn to hot button topics. And that issue, if you guys aren't familiar, the Vernon Family Farm out in Newfields, they're a big farm. They throw these agritourism events on weekends. Music, traffic, kids running around, animals, selling food, selling drinks. And it's gotten their neighbors upset with them. And I understand that. I understand why they would be upset with that. And so the Vernon Family Farm came on the episode, and they're really good at speaking to just how they've been navigating the situation with their neighbors that's been ongoing over the last few years. And that was a really powerful episode and really resonated with a lot of people, because there's a lot of people that love going to that farm that are really deeply disturbed by what's been going on the last few years there with their neighbors. And so that episode was by far the most listened to episode, by far the most engaged with episode, performed really well on social media as well. So that was definitely the one I got the most feedback from, the most new listeners from. And so that was really cool. Now, in terms of what resonated most with me, there are a few ones that come to my mind. Seacoast Stories has also low-key been a great way just to make friends. Alex, we're now friends.
Yeah.
Amy, who is an artist that I had on the show, she's like the local just community artist is what she bills herself as, is just the sweetest person ever. And I met her from doing the show, and we connected a lot on kind of our similar viewpoints of, we love getting people together. The world needs more face-to-face interaction. We need less fake interactions. We need people being real, being vulnerable. She was doing that on her episode with me, and then we just chit-chatted for an hour afterwards, and now we're friends. We collaborate on things. We get together all the time. I'm friends with her husband. It's great. So that was one that really came to my mind. It was a powerful episode. Sarah Olson, who's a yoga teacher as well, after we had our conversation, I booked one of her yoga retreats. I was like, I want to go to Mexico with you. And so I'm doing that in January. I'm really excited about that. She was another kind soul that I see walking around town all the time when she's not on a retreat. And we connect, again, just like-minded people. Those are the ones that really come to my mind as the ones that really stand out. And then also with Katie Marshall, who owns Studio One Cycling in Dover. That was the episode I said that put Seacoast Stories on the map. That was in the first 10 episodes. That was the one that really resonated with people, that got a lot of feedback. She has a cult-like following. You know, you work out a lot. You know that gyms can have diehard cult-like followings. And I definitely felt that energy with Studio One. And she was a great conversation. She has an incredible story. And I can't wait to talk to her at the live show again, because it's truly an incredible story. And I'm honored to have told it. And then when I went to Studio One a few weeks after that for my first class, she was teaching it. She was up front in the dark room and she's like, hey, everyone look at seat number 25. That's Troy. He's the one who told our story. Send all your energy toward Troy. And that was just the coolest thing. To hear someone else talk about Seacoast Stories, this thing that just like lives in my mind all of the time, was so cool and validating. Like, oh yeah, people listen to this. Because when I'm recording my voiceovers in my studio closet talking to no one, you just feel like you're talking to yourself. You forget that people are listening. So getting those reminders from Katie that day, or from people overhearing me talk when I'm at the Rosa in downtown Portsmouth. I was on a date and someone, are you Troy from the podcast? Yeah, just recognize my voice. That is so cool when that happens and reminds me, oh yeah, people listen.
I want to know, is there a common theme among the people of the Seacoast? So part of your tagline is it's America's hidden gem. And now you've done a whole season. Is there an underlying theme of the people that you've interviewed? Something that you're like, this is what makes the Seacoast great. Yeah. What is it?
The most uttered word on the podcast by far is community. And this is a word, especially in what I do, podcasting, that gets thrown out a lot. A lot of hosts, producers, companies talk about building community. In the wake of the pandemic, I've seen an uptick in the use of that word. I hadn't really heard the word community used in the way that we use it now. And I think it's because we realized in COVID that it's very important to have meaningful relationships with good people in your immediate area. It's great to have online relationships with people. It's so cool that we can use social media and WhatsApp and all of these other platforms to connect with people instantly around the world. It's cool that we can do that. It's cool that we can make podcasts that reach people all around the world, but it's missing something, that kind of interaction. It's not as special. It can be so transient having online relationships. We need to build stuff together in person. We need to build off each other's energy and be real and open and honest and vulnerable with each other. And so a lot of people say they're building community, but aren't. But I think the Seacoast is very good at creating community, building community, and they know what it actually is. And what I think community is, it's just doing things together in person, side by side, going to all the local events. You mentioned you were at the Live Free market or whatever. People love going to those events and the farmers markets and the parades. The Portsmouth loves a parade. They close down the entire town 3 days a year for parades. It's so cool. And I've lived a lot of places, and it's not like that. Portsmouth and what the Seacoast in general has is just this ride or die, support local. I mean, we drove Starbucks out of town. What place drives Starbucks out of town? Because it's so hyper localized, because people would so much rather go to Cup of Joe or Flamingos or Wild Valentine
or White Heron,
local or White Heron, and then they'd rather do that than go to Starbucks. So I just think this area is really cool. Community has been a common theme. I imagine will continue to be a theme, because that's just what the Seacoast is about.
Well, yeah,
so
because
cool.
You're building community. So do you want
trying to.
Do you want to tell us about your live event on January 9th?
Yeah. Thursday, January 9th at the press room. I'm really excited about this. There's so many things that I'm working on behind the scenes that y'all don't know about all the time. I've had this booked since July, and I couldn't really speak about it until a week or two ago. It's going to be a special night. Katie Marshall is going to join me from Studio One. Ray and Ryan Lambert from the River app are going to join me as well. They've all joined the show. And then a newcomer to the show is Crystal Hicks, who is just like a badass. And I'm so excited to talk to her. I actually got together with Crystal and Katie yesterday for a little planning session and we talked for like 3 hours. It's going to be so epic. They are so great and so smart and inspiring. They're badass business women. Super excited for it. And we're going to sell this thing out. I can't wait. What I did in March was just like, I'm just trying this out. I'm doing basic, stripped down. The goal is just to not mess anything up. Now I know I can do it. So we're going to up it up. There's going to be a higher production value. There's going to be more audience interaction, participation. There's going to be opportunity to win cash prizes. And I've got a bunch of people from season 1, the guests that I've had on, a lot of them, including yourself, Alex, have agreed to contribute to the event. So audience members, buy your tickets. It's $19 the day of $19 in advance, $22 the day of the show. Get them in advance. And I promise you, you're going to get so much value for what you walk away with, because you're going to get so many discounts and deals from some of your favorite Seacoast spots. You're going to get inspiration from my guests. You're going to get entertainment. And you're just going to really feel what it's like to be a part of something special.
I bought my ticket yesterday. I'm super excited.
So
yes, you are hosting a live event, but you're also a Renaissance man. So I hear. So you're always up to something.
Always.
So do you want to tell us, I believe you have a beer out. Do you want to talk to us about that?
I do, yes. This came out last week. On the second episode of Seacoast Stories, I spoke to Maggie from Seacoast Lately. And I just threw out on there, hey, if any brewery people are listening and you want to make the Seacoast Stories IPA, just slide into the DMs. I just threw it out there. I'll see if anyone bites. Couple weeks go by, I get a text message from someone who works at Loaded Question. They're like, I think we can do that for you. Let's get together and talk about it. And this is maybe like September when this meeting happens, August, September. So we sit down, I say, here's what I'm envisioning. Here's the local beers that I like. I like the Stoneface IPA. I like the Goat IPA. I like the Maine lunch beer. These are all the things I like. Can we make something that's inspired by these ingredients that tastes like these things? And they said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. We know the flavor profile that you're talking about. So we got to talking back and forth, blah, 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 worked out the details. And here we are, the Seacoast Stories IPA, which is closely related to the Maine lunch beer, which is arguably the most beloved IPA in New England. It's definitely right up there. Definitely in New Hampshire, Maine. Everyone loves the lunch beer. I love the lunch beer. It's one of my favorites. Whenever I see the lunch on a menu, I have to get it. So the Seacoast Stories IPA is a close relative of that. My artist friend, Amy, that I spoke about, she designed the beer can with watercolors. And if you look very closely on this can, which is the Memorial Bridge in Portsmouth, which is my favorite bridge, you zoom in closely. There's a little tiny stick figure man next to his bicycle. And that's me. And there's so much symbolism in this thing if you look at the can. Because where I am placed on the bridge, I'm on the New Hampshire side. I'm facing straight, like as if I were to walk across the bridge, but I'm 1/3 of the way there. I'm on the path. I can see the destination. I know where I'm going. I just need to keep walking straight, but I'm still far away. I can see it, but I'm still far away, but I'm on the right path and I know how to get there. And so all that symbolism is baked into Seacoast Stories IPA. And one of my huge beliefs in life is just to take people along for the ride. I don't want to be successful for the sake of being successful and like I want money and I want fame and I want power. I want to be successful because I want to bring along all of the people who have made an impact on my life. I want to bring them along for the ride. I want them to share in the success with me. So with the IPA, for example, me and Amy really connected and I love her work and I love what she's about and she's genuine and I trust her. I want her to get some of the shine from this thing that I want to do. With Seacoast Stories, I'm just going to continue doing that. I respect you, Alex. I have so much love for you. I want you to be a part of my live event in some way by having your discount in my goodie bag. I love Katie Marshall, what she's about. I want to put you on stage in front of people to talk to people so that people can get to know you more, get to know Studio One more, and just fall in love with you. That's what I'm about, and that's what I'm going to do till the day I die.
And your IPA will be at the live event.
Yes, it will be at the live event on tap. So cool. I'm going to not drink during the show because I need to, be on my P's and Q's, but I want to. Trust me. It will be at Loaded Question on tap. It will be at Treeline Outfitters, one of my go-to spots on tap as well. And then you can also get cans to go at Loaded Question. Limited time though, so get it while you can.
So season 1 is closing up.
Yeah.
We're moving into season 2 with Seacoast Stories. I have 2 questions. How do you choose your guest for Seacoast Stories? Because I know you've had to turn people down.
Yes.
So how do you choose your guest? And what are we looking at with season 2?
Yes, great question. So I've had to really think about the strategy regarding guests now. When I started the show, it was just, who do I want to talk to? Who am I interested in? What subjects am I interested in? I lean toward health and wellness. I lean toward entrepreneurship and beer and coffee. And so the early days of the show reflect my interests. But as the word started getting out about the show, I started getting inquiries from people who wanted to come on the show. To break the fourth wall, as we say in media, Alex, I had no idea who you were. You DM'd me.
I was like, I want to be on
Yeah,
that.
you DM'd me and told me what you were about. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know who this person is. They haven't come recommended to me at all. So in that case, when that happens, then I was like, okay, I need to get in the same room with this person. I need to feel their energy. I need to hear their story, just snippets of it, just to see if there's a good fit. And so we got together at Laney and Lou just for coffee really quick, heard some of your story, felt your energy. I was like, yes, okay, I want to talk to her. But I've done that with other people and turned them away. I've done that exact same thing and I've turned them away where I'm just like, I'm just not feeling it. So now the system that I have moving forward, number one guest is, who do I want to talk to? That's like the number one overall choice. Who do I want to talk to? Who am I deeply interested in? 2, what is a local brand, name, company that maybe I'm not too intimately familiar with, but I know people are really interested in, a la Vernon Family Farm, that people would want to hear more about, listen to. That's the second. 3, someone that comes recommended from a trusted friend, source, someone whose opinion I really respect. Then the 4th, I now have a Google submission form so that when someone cold reaches out to me, I'm just going to send them the form and essentially state their case as to why they think they would be a good candidate on the show. And then I will filter through that and see if it's a good fit. But the cold reach outs, it puts me in a bad spot because I want to tell everyone's story. Everyone has a story that deserves to be told, but the reality is I just can't. And I'm also not interested. Like, I got a DM last week from someone who said, do a story on this company. They're doing something really revolutionary in plastics. I know nothing about plastics. My interests are health and wellness, coffee, beer, exercise, self-improvement, entrepreneurship, tech, media, podcasting. I love those conversations. I can't fake my way through a conversation about plastics. Even if they're doing something revolutionary, I can't pretend to act like I'm interested in that. And so I have to turn those people away. If I'm faking my interest, that comes through to my audience, and that can't happen.
Right. And so what can we expect from season 2 then?
Ooh, okay.
Can you give us any hints
so
on what
when we're speaking right now, I've got 3 scheduled on the books. This is just I don't like to talk about them before they happen because then that's just the jinx. But the first few episodes will be with very recognizable brands that people know and love in the area.
So will it be a similar feel to season 1? Like you're going to interview guests locally and that's what we expect?
Yes, all of that will stay the same. I'm always trying to level up. So I'm still toying with the video components. Everyone and their mother wants podcasts to be on YouTube. That's the way the industry is going. I work at Spotify. I know this intimately. Spotify is deeply invested in video podcasting. I know I need to be there. It's just a resources thing. It's a bandwidth thing. It's a time thing. Producing video podcasts is a whole other ball game. I have the skill set. It's a major time suck. And so I'm weighing how much I want to do that. And then I'm toying with, should I stick with the same format? Should I change the format at all? But at the end of the day, at its core, I will be speaking to local people. That won't change.
With season 1, I have one more question.
Yes.
So you're a personal development type of guy.
Yeah.
What did you learn the most about yourself doing season 1?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. What did I learn most about myself? That I'm very capable. As I look back on my story, everything that I've done, everywhere I've been, it's now making sense to me. I've always believed deep in my heart that I was capable of something big, but I never really had the evidence to support that. It was just this belief. I didn't have that outward metrics or interest from other people to support that I was going somewhere. It wasn't until Seacoast Stories that I really had that, like, oh, okay, I can do something that resonates with people. I can do something that people will continually come back for. I've had blogs, I've had books, I've put out so much stuff through the years. Nothing has really quite stuck aside from my Substack. I had a pretty popular Substack at some point. Nothing's really quite stuck. And so I was doubting my own capability. I was also in some like abusive work relationships as well that kind of diminished my self-belief and self-confidence, who told me I was only worth being behind the scenes and that I wasn't even good at that. So Seacoast Stories, I've realized that it's all now starting to make sense. The wandering the world, the feelings of being lost, grinding at ESPN, grinding at Spotify, grinding on my personal podcast that were going nowhere, but I was so addicted to it, I couldn't stop. It's just all making sense now. It's all coming together into what I'm seeing now. Like in hindsight, all the pieces make sense. I had to be at ESPN. I had to be at Spotify to be a student and learn from the best of the best in the industry to see what good interviewing is like, what good content is like, what good production quality is like, what good promotion is like, how to conduct yourself, how to follow up and send emails and be kind and nice and respectful, but stern so that you don't get taken advantage of. I had to learn all of these things in that journey to pave the way for what I'm doing now. Because when I was 21, I wanted to do what I'm doing now. I did not have the skill set or experience to do that. I have that now. And I think I'm on the path. I'm 1/3 of the way there. I can see the destination. I just got to keep going straight and keep putting in the work.
Amazing. Well, we're getting close to wrapping up here today. I do have a fun question. So, like I said, you are a man of many talents, and I know you studied a lot of history.
Yeah.
So, is it okay if I ask you a fun history
question? God, please.
What would be a fun historical fact for your audience? That's something that we don't necessarily know about or people don't know about, but just like a random historical fact that would just be interesting to learn today.
Yeah. I'm going to fudge the numbers here. Okay, so I work in combat sports, and the UFC is like the main mixed martial arts organization. The UFC was sold in 2016 for $4 billion or something. In 1869, the United States of America purchased Alaska for like $3 million. Inflation today, it's like a quarter of what the UFC was sold for in 2016. Alaska, the state of Alaska, the lands, the resources, the beauty was worth a quarter of what the UFC was sold for in 2016. It's the greatest steal in the history of economy and land acquisition.
I knew you had some good facts in you. That's amazing. Amazing. So Troy, Renaissance man, doing all these things, beer, live events, Seacoast Stories. We've gotten through season 1. Season 2 is coming up. History major. Oh, and by the way, he wrote a book called Surrender, which we didn't even get into. Yeah, thank you so much for being here, for being on your own podcast. And you know how it ends, right?
How's it? Because it's going to end differently in season 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, we need to wrap up season 1.
Yes.
Troy Farkas, what is your mission?
I knew this was going to happen at some point. To use my unique skills, capabilities, knowledge to bring people closer together.
Amazing.
I have one more question for you, Alex. As I was editing our episode together, I was kicking myself. And I do this after every episode. I kick myself for the questions I did not ask that I should have asked. You said at the very end something jaw-dropping that I just went right by, and that's bad interviewing. You said that you've seen miracles and that you've seen someone go from being homeless to making 6 figures. Can you tell me more about the miracles that you've seen and that specific example? How is that possible?
Well, if we're going to transition there, the miracle of healing. So when someone chooses, I feel like you're a walking miracle based on what you've said today, right? Like you didn't believe in yourself and then you started to execute and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can do this. I can do anything, basically, which you're proving to the world. But in terms of, my experience and my background, it's like the miracle of healing. And so if someone really chooses themselves and really has the tools to help themselves, I have seen several clients. I had one client that was homeless and she paid me $20 a month. There's a whole backstory behind that. But yes, there was an exchange in it. She paid me $20 a month because she really wanted to receive this healing because she knew that it would work for her. And so she went from homeless to getting a job to going to college and getting a 4-year degree, and then now makes 6 figures doing what she does. Yeah. I had someone who was a heroin addict, and now she is the manager of a car dealership, making tons of money. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. But sometimes the real miracle is just being able to be yourself. And for me personally, it's like the miracle of my life is that, I'm comfortable being Alex. That's my miracle.
That's Alex Bynum from Empowering Path, who I thank so much for helping to tell some of my story and for giving me the chance to also completely butcher a historical fact. Here's the correct stat. Yes, the UFC was purchased in 2016 for $4 billion. However, the US bought Alaska for $7 million, not $3, and it happened in 1867, not 69. Adjusted for inflation today, that price tag comes out to $130 million, which makes it not 1/4 of the UFC sale price, but 1/30. Yes, the Ultimate Fighting Championship is worth 30 times more than the state of Alaska was. Now that that's off my chest, I thank you so much for listening. And if you see me around town this week, perhaps at Loaded Question having one too many Seacoast Stories IPAs, please stop me and say hi. I would love to hear your story. Until next week, everybody, have a great week. Live free or die.